I still can't drive past certain gravel roads in West Virginia without my stomach dropping. This happened about 3 years ago, and even now, thinking about it makes my hands sweat on the wheel. My wife and our 8-year-old son wanted one last camping trip before school started. We packed the cooler, sleeping bags, a cheap tent, and headed toward the Monongahela National Forest. We weren't trying to rough it too hard, just find a dispersed spot off a Forest Service road, make a fire, roast marshmallows, the usual. The plan was simple. Take 219 north out of Elkins, then turn onto one of the gravel roads that spiderweb through the hills. Cell service is spotty up there anyway, so when the GPS on my phone blinked out about 20 minutes after we left the pavement, I wasn't worried. I figured we'd see a decent pull-off soon enough. We didn't. The road got narrower, trees crowding in until branches scraped the roof. Potholes turned into washed-out sections where I had to crawl the car in first gear. My wife kept saying we should turn around, but there was barely room to do a 3-point turn, and backing down that mess for miles sounded worse than pushing forward. Our son was in the back playing on his tablet, battery almost dead, and asking every 5 minutes if we were there yet. After what felt like forever, but was probably only 40 minutes, the road opened into a small clearing. There was an old cabin sitting there, logs weathered gray, tin roof rusted red, one window boarded up, the other missing its glass. No smoke from the chimney, no car, no lights. Just tire tracks in the dirt that looked pretty fresh, like someone had been there within the last day or two. I killed the engine. Silence rushed in. My wife looked at me like I'd lost my mind. "We're not staying here," she said. But the sun was dropping fast, and the idea of driving back in the dark on that road with no guardrails and no phone signal made my skin crawl. I got out, walked around the cabin. Door was padlocked, but the lock looked new. Porch boards creaked under my boots. I peered through the broken window. Inside was dark, but I could make out a wood stove, a table, some chairs. Looked lived in, but empty. We decided to stay one night, just one. Pitch the tent 20 yards away in the trees, keep the car close, leave at first light. What could go wrong in 12 hours? We set up quick. Fire, hot dogs, s'mores. Our son was excited at first, then got quiet when the woods went completely black. No moon that night, just the firelight and the sound of things moving in the underbrush. Probably deer or raccoons, I told myself. Around 11, we zipped into the tent. I lay there listening to my family breathe, trying to convince myself the place felt normal. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling the tent at a distance. Not close enough to touch the nylon, but close enough I could hear the crunch of leaves and gravel. They went around once, around twice, stopped, started again. Never came closer, never went away. I didn't wake my wife. I just lay there, frozen, knife in my hand under the sleeping bag, waiting for whatever it was to make a move. After maybe 20 minutes, the steps faded. I told myself it was an animal. Had to be. Morning came gray and cold. We packed fast. While my wife loaded the cooler, I walked the perimeter to see if I could spot tracks. That's when I found them. Not animal prints, boot prints, size 10 or 11, deep tread. They made a perfect circle around our tent, maybe 15 out. And they weren't from the night before. They were fresh, the edges still sharp, meaning whoever made them had been there after the footsteps stopped, while we slept. I didn't say anything yet, just hurried everyone into the car. That's when I noticed something else. The padlock on the cabin door was gone, door slightly ajar. I shouldn't have left it alone. I didn't. I pushed the door open with my foot. Inside smelled of wood smoke and something metallic,
On the table was a half-eaten can of beans, spoons still in it, coffee mug with lipstick on the rim, my wife's shade, the one she wore the day before. My heart slammed against my ribs. I hadn't seen her leave anything here. I turned to leave, and that's when I saw the back wall. There was a narrow door set into the logs, almost invisible unless you knew to look. It was cracked open half an inch. I pulled it wider. Behind it was a small room. No windows, low ceiling, concrete floor. In the corner, a metal cot bolted to the ground, leather straps at the wrists and ankles, dark stains on the mattress. On the wall, someone had scratched tally marks, dozens of them, grouped in fives. I backed out fast, slammed the door, ran to the car, told my wife we were leaving right now. She saw my face and didn't argue. Getting the car unstuck from the mud took 20 agonizing minutes. Every second I expected hands on the windows, someone stepping out of the trees. Nothing happened. We finally lurched onto the road and didn't stop until we hit pavement in Elkins. We drove straight to the county sheriff's office. I told the deputy everything, the cabin, the prints, the room. He listened, nodded, said he'd send someone out. A week later, he called back, said they found the cabin exactly where I described, but it had been abandoned for at least 5 years. No padlock, no fresh tracks, no hidden room, just an empty shell with a collapsed back wall and animals living in it. He asked if I was sure about the location. I gave him the GPS coordinates I'd marked when we finally got signal again. He said they checked that spot. Nothing matched. I still have the photo I took of the cabin before we left, time-stamped, geotagged. I look at it sometimes, and the building looks exactly the same. But in the picture, the door is closed, padlocked, and no fresh tire tracks. My wife won't talk about it anymore. Our son asks sometimes why we don't go camping. I tell him we're too busy. I don't know who or what was using that place. I don't know how they made the sheriff see an empty ruin. I just know that every time I see a gravel road disappearing into the trees, I keep driving straight. Because somewhere back in those hills, there's a cabin that isn't supposed to be occupied, and someone still lives there.
I needed quiet, real quiet. Not the fake kind you get in suburbs outside Chicago where garbage trucks and neighbors' dogs still break the silence. My wife agreed we should rent a cabin somewhere remote for a long weekend. She found one listed online, a place called Hemlock Hollow, deep in the Monongahela National Forest of West Virginia. The photos showed a weathered wood cabin perched on a ridge, surrounded by nothing but trees and mist. No cell service, the listing warned. Perfect. We drove in on Friday afternoon. The last hour was on gravel roads that narrowed until branches scraped both sides of the car. When we finally reached the cabin, it looked smaller than in the photos. The porch sagged on one side. The key was under a rusted horseshoe beside the door, just like the instructions said. Inside smelled of pine cleaner and damp wood. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a wood stove. My wife unpacked while I checked the windows. Old single-pane glass, latches worn smooth with age. I locked them anyway. Habit. Night fell fast in the hollow. No streetlights, no distant glow from town, just blackness so complete it felt physical. We ate canned soup heated on a propane burner, played 2 hands of cards by lantern light, and went to bed early. I fell asleep listening to the wind move through hemlock branches. I woke to the sound of footsteps on the back porch. Not the creak of old wood settling, not an animal. These were deliberate steps, slow, heavy, pacing the length of the porch. Stop, turn, pace back. Each footfall distinct. Too heavy to be my wife. She was breathing softly beside me. I lay still, counting the steps, left to right, right to left, for nearly 2 minutes. Then silence. I whispered to my wife. She woke instantly, tense. "Did you hear that?" She shook her head. "Hear what?" The steps hadn't been loud, but in that silence, even a whisper carried. She would have heard them, unless she'd been awake the whole time and was testing me. A stupid thought, but it stuck. I waited an hour before easing out of bed, pulled on jeans, took the heavy flashlight from the kitchen counter. My wife watched me, but didn't speak. I unlatched the deadbolt slowly, turned the knob, pushed the door open 6 inches. Cold air rushed in. The porch was empty. I swept the flashlight beam across the planks. Mud, fresh mud, still glistening in the beam. Boot prints, large, with a deep heel impression. They led from the edge of the porch to our back door, and stopped. No prints leading away. I stepped outside, heart hammering. The mud was soft under my own shoes. I followed the edge of the porch around to the front. Nothing. No tracks in the dirt yard, no broken branches, no tire marks on the gravel drive beyond the cabin. Back inside, I locked the door and slid a wooden chair under the knob. My wife was sitting up in bed now, fully awake. What was it? Someone walked on our porch, left muddy prints right at the door. She just nodded, pulled the blankets tighter. We didn't sleep the rest of the night, sat in the dark, listening. Nothing else happened. Morning came gray and damp. Mist clung to the trees. As soon as there was enough light, I went outside again. My wife stayed by the window, watching. The boot prints were still there on the back porch. I knelt to examine them. Size 13, maybe? Deep heel, shallow toe, like whoever made them put all their weight backward. Then I saw it. A single print, smaller, fainter, led from the porch edge down 3 steps into the dirt, and from there a trail of partial impressions, just the ball of the foot each time, crossed the 10 feet of packed earth to the cabin's back door. But that wasn't what made my throat close up. Another set of prints, identical to the ones on the porch, started right at our bedroom window. They crossed the narrow strip of grass beside the cabin and stopped at the driver's side door of our car. I walked slowly toward the car. The prints were fresh. The mud hadn't dried. I opened the car door. Nothing seemed disturbed. Then I saw it. On the driver's seat, a folded piece of paper, damp at the edges. I hadn't left anything on the seat. My wife never sat in the driver's seat. I unfolded it with trembling fingers. It was a receipt from a gas station in Marlington, West Virginia, 30 miles from here, dated yesterday, for 2 gallons of gas. And underneath the printed text, handwritten in blue ink, "You shouldn't have come back." We packed in 20 minutes, didn't speak, threw clothes in suitcases, dumped them in the trunk. I kept glancing at the tree line, expecting to see a figure watching. As I backed the car down the gravel drive, my wife finally spoke. "We never told anyone we were coming here." I knew. We'd booked under a fake name, paid cash through a third-party site. No social media posts, no texts to friends. Halfway down the mountain, I had to stop. A fallen tree blocked the road. Not recent. The bark was dry, branches brittle. But it hadn't been there when we drove in yesterday. I checked both directions. No tire marks besides ours. No footprints in the soft shoulder. We turned around, drove back to the cabin, called the rental agency from the car using a weak signal I found near the ridge. The woman on the phone sounded confused. "Hemlock Hollow, sir. That cabin's been vacant for 8 months. Owner passed away last fall. We haven't listed it since." I looked at the cabin through the windshield. The front door stood slightly ajar. I was certain I'd closed it. My wife touched my arm. "Look!" In the dirt beside the car, leading from the tree line to the passenger side door, were fresh boot prints, size 13, deep heel. And between them, smaller barefoot prints, like a child's.
We never went back inside. We drove until we hit a cell tower and called the state police. They found nothing. No prints on the porch, no receipt in the car, no fallen tree on the access road. The ranger who took our statement was polite but skeptical. Said animals sometimes made sounds that mimicked footsteps. Said mud could shift in ways that looked like prints. But he didn't explain the receipt or the disappearance of the fallen tree on the road. We didn't talk much about that night after that, but whenever I hear footsteps in the dark, even if it's just branches tapping against the window, I grab my wife's hand and wait for my heart to stop racing. Because some things aren't forgotten, you just learn how to live with them.
I never believed my grandmother when she told me to stay away from the old homesteads near Panther Creek in McDowell County, West Virginia. She'd get this look in her eyes, distant and afraid, whenever I asked her why. "Some places are meant to be forgotten," she'd say, "and the people there want to be forgotten too." Last October, I found out what she meant. I'm a freelance photographer, and I'd gotten a commission from a regional magazine to document abandoned coal towns in southern West Virginia. The pay was decent, and I figured it'd make for a strong portfolio piece. McDowell County was hit hard when the mines closed. Whole communities just withered away. Perfect subject matter. I drove down Route 52 on a gray Tuesday morning, my GPS leading me deeper into the mountains. The further I went, the spottier the cell service became. By the time I turned onto the unmarked dirt road that supposedly led to an abandoned mining camp near Panther Creek, I had no signal at all. The road was rough, full of potholes and overgrown with vegetation that scraped against my car. I almost turned back twice, but I'd driven 3 hours already. I pressed on. The settlement appeared suddenly through the trees, maybe a dozen structures scattered along the creek bed. Most were falling apart, roofs caved in, porches collapsed. But 3 houses looked almost maintained. Not pristine, but standing, intact. That should have been my first warning. I parked and grabbed my camera gear. The silence was oppressive. No birds, no insects, nothing but the distant gurgle of the creek. I started shooting the most deteriorated buildings first, getting those stark, melancholy shots that editors love. That's when I noticed the smoke. It was coming from the chimney of one of the intact houses, a small gray column rising into the overcast sky. Someone was living here. I should have left, but curiosity got the better of me. I walked toward the house, calling out "hello" as I approached. No answer. The windows were covered with thick curtains, but I could see a faint light inside. I knocked. Waited. Knocked again. The door opened so suddenly I stumbled backward. An old woman stood there, maybe 70, with watery blue eyes and thin white hair. She was wearing a house dress that looked like it was from the 1950s. "You're not supposed to be here," she said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "I'm sorry, I didn't know anyone still lived here. I'm just taking some photographs." "We don't want photographs." She started to close the door. "Wait," I said. "I can leave, no problem. I just wanted to make sure it was okay." "It's not okay. You need to leave before sundown. They don't like strangers after dark." "They?" She glanced over her shoulder into the house, then back at me. "The others. They don't take kindly to outsiders. Please, just go." The way she said it made my skin crawl, but like an idiot, I didn't listen. I told her I'd be gone soon and walked back toward the other buildings. I spent another hour photographing the settlement.
The light was getting interesting, that golden hour glow starting to filter through the clouds. I lost track of time. When I finally checked my watch, it was 6:47 p.m. The sun was setting fast behind the mountains. That's when I saw them. People were emerging from the intact houses. 5, 6, 7 of them, men and women of various ages, all wearing clothes that looked decades out of date. They stood in their doorways, perfectly still, watching me. I waved nervously. None of them waved back. They just stared. I started walking toward my car, trying not to run, trying not to show fear, but more people were appearing. Some from the houses, but others just stepping out from between buildings, from behind trees, all silent, all staring. By the time I reached my car, there were at least 20 of them. They'd formed a loose semicircle, blocking the road out. Their faces were blank, expressionless. In the dying light, their eyes looked wrong, too reflective, catching the last rays of sun like animal eyes. My hands shook as I fumbled with my keys. One of them, a man in overalls, took a step forward. "You were told to leave." "I'm leaving now. I'm sorry, I just lost track of time." "Too late," the old woman before pushed through the group. "Sun's gone down. You're ours now." "What are you talking about? I'm leaving right now." "You can try." She smiled, and her teeth looked sharp in the shadows. I threw my gear in the back seat and jumped in the car. The engine turned over, thank God, and I threw it in reverse. The crowd didn't move, didn't react. They just watched as I maneuvered around them. I drove faster than I should have on that terrible road, but I didn't care. I kept checking the rearview mirror, expecting to see them chasing me, but the road behind was empty. It took me 20 minutes to reach the highway. When I finally got cell service back, I had 17 missed calls from my grandmother. I didn't stop driving until I crossed the county line. I don't know who those people were or what they wanted, but I know my grandmother was right. Some places are meant to be forgotten, and I'm terrified they haven't forgotten me.
I should have turned around at the gas station. The old man behind the counter in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, had looked at my hiking map and shaken his head slowly. "You planning to camp around Elkmond? Up near them old cabins?" His finger, stained yellow from decades of cigarettes, tapped the section I'd circled. "Yeah, why? Is the trail closed?" "Trail's open." He wrung out my beef jerky and water bottles. "Just, folks don't much like staying up there after dark. Cell service cuts out about 3 miles in." I'd laughed it off. I was from Boston. I'd driven 12 hours to experience the real Appalachia everyone kept posting about online. I wanted isolation. I wanted silence. I wanted to disconnect. The hike started fine. September in the Smokies was perfect. Cool enough to move comfortably, warm enough that I didn't need layers. The trail wound through dense forest, past streams that looked like they belonged on a postcard. I saw exactly 2 other people in the first hour, both heading down as I climbed up. "You got a campsite reserved?" the woman asked, adjusting her backpack straps. "Nah, I'm just gonna find a spot. It's not peak season." She exchanged a look with her husband. "Well, good luck." That should have been my second warning. By 4 p.m., I'd found what looked like an unofficial campsite, a cleared area with a stone fire ring about 30 feet from the trail. The trees here grew different, taller, closer together. Their branches wove overhead like fingers interlacing, blocking out most of the sky.
I set up my tent, started a small fire, and ate my dinner as the sun began its descent. That's when I first heard it. A hollow sound, like someone blowing across the mouth of a massive bottle. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, then stopped. I looked around, but the forest had gone completely still. No birds, no insects, just that strange reverberating hum still echoing in my ears. Probably just wind through a cave opening, I muttered to myself. But there was no wind. As darkness fell, the temperature dropped fast. I retreated into my tent around 8 p.m., planning to read by flashlight. That's when my phone died. I'd charged it fully that morning. It was at 87% when I checked it an hour ago. Now it wouldn't even turn on. The hollow sound came again. Closer this time. Longer. I unzipped my tent and looked out. My fire had burned down to embers, but in its faint glow I could see the trees. Or rather, I could see that something was wrong with the trees. They looked closer, like they'd leaned in while I wasn't watching. "You're being ridiculous," I whispered. The sound came from behind me now. I spun around, nothing but darkness and trees. I grabbed my flashlight and clicked it on. Dead. Brand new batteries installed that morning. Dead. My heart started hammering. I fumbled for my backup flashlight. Also dead. The glow sticks I'd packed as a last resort. I cracked one. It flickered weakly for about 10 seconds, then gone dark. That's when I noticed the silence. Complete and total silence. In a forest, there's always sound. Always. Leaves rustling, branches creaking, animals moving. But this was the silence of a soundproofed room. The silence of deep space. It pressed against my eardrums like water pressure. The hollow sound again. This time I felt it in my chest, a vibration that made my ribs ache. I made a decision. I was getting out. Now. I didn't care that it was full dark or that I'd look like an idiot. I started stuffing things into my backpack. Forget the tent, forget being organized. I just needed to move. That's when I realized I couldn't remember which direction the trail was. I'd been on it less than 6 hours ago. I'd set up camp 30 feet from it. But now in the absolute darkness, every direction looked the same. I picked what I thought was the right way and started walking, arms outstretched, moving slowly. I walked for what felt like an hour. The trees never ended. I never found the trail. And every few minutes that sound would come again, from a different direction each time, hurting me. That's what it felt like something was guiding me deeper into the woods. My foot caught on something and I went down hard, hands scraping against rough bark. I'd walked face first into a tree, but that was impossible. I'd had my arms out. I should have felt it. I pressed my back against the trunk, breathing hard. That's when I felt it. Vibration in the tree, like a heartbeat. Slow, steady. And all around me, I realized every tree was doing the same thing, pulsing. The entire forest was pulsing. The hollow sound came again, and this time I understood. It wasn't coming from the forest. It was the forest. The trees themselves making that sound, together. I don't know how long I sat there. Time felt wrong, stretched out. Eventually I saw light. Not dawn, it was still too dark for that, but a faint glow through the trees. I stumbled towards it, tripping, falling, getting back up. The gas station, and somehow walked in a circle and ended up back at the road, miles from where I'd parked my car. The old man was locking up. He looked at me, muddy, scraped up, wild-eyed, and just nodded slowly. "Elkman?" I couldn't speak, just nodded. "Yeah, it does that sometimes. My grandfather used to say them woods around the old cabins don't like folks who come looking for something. It gives them what they're looking for." He blew out smoke. "You wanted isolation, didn't you?" I never went back for my tent. I never went back to those mountains.
I grew up in eastern Kentucky, where the mountains press down on you like a weight you can't shake. My family's been in Pike County for 5 generations, back when coal was king and the hollows had names nobody bothered putting on maps. This happened last October when I went back to settle my Uncle Vernon's estate. He died alone in the old family cabin, and since I was the only living relative who gave a damn, the job fell to me. The cabin sat at the end of a logging road that barely qualified as one anymore. Vernon had been a solitary man, getting more paranoid each year. The last time I'd seen him, maybe 3 years back, he'd rambled about how the mountain was taking folks. I figured it was early dementia. I should have listened. The first night, I found his journals. Dozens of composition notebooks stacked in the closet, each one dated. The recent ones were nearly illegible, his handwriting deteriorating into frantic scrawls. But one passage from 6 months ago was clear enough. They're not disappearing. They're being taken into the tunnels. I can hear them at night, calling from under the ground. The mining company knew. They knew what they'd wake up. I laughed it off. Eastern Kentucky is riddled with abandoned mines, thousands of miles of forgotten shafts and tunnels. People do fall into them sometimes. Hell, there's a famous case from the 60s where a woman's car got swallowed by a subsidence that opened up right under Route 23. But Vernon's obsession went deeper. He'd drawn crude maps, marking locations across 3 counties. Each X was labeled with a name and date. I recognized some of them, local people who'd vanished over the years. The police always assumed they'd fled debt, or bad marriages, or meth addictions. In Appalachia, people disappear all the time, and nobody looks too hard. The second night, I heard it. I was going through Vernon's papers when a sound drifted up from somewhere beneath the cabin. Not exactly a voice, more like the memory of one. A woman calling out words I couldn't quite make out, muffled by earth and rock. I went outside with a flashlight. The forest was absolutely silent, that unnatural quiet where even the insects stop. The sound was coming near the old root cellar, a structure my great-grandfather had built into the hillside. The cellar door was open. I knew I'd latched it that morning. I'm not a brave person, but I'm not an idiot either. I got in my truck and drove to the nearest gas station with Wi-Fi. Started researching. What I found made my hands shake. The mining company Vernon mentioned, Blackwood Consolidated, had operated in these mountains from 1952 to 1967. They'd been drilling test shafts for a new deep mining operation when they hit something. The official record says geological instability, but I found a newspaper article from the Hazard Herald buried in a digital archive. 3 miners had broken through into a natural cave system. Something about the air in there. They'd come up changed. Wouldn't talk, couldn't eat, just stared at nothing and made sounds like they were trying to speak through water. 2 died within a week. The third one walked back into the mine and was never seen again. Blackwood sealed that section with concrete, bulldozed the site, paid off the families to stay quiet. I found a location on Vernon's map. It was less than a mile from his cabin, marked with a red star. I should have left, packed up, put the cabin on the market, and never looked back. But Vernon had written something else in his clearest handwriting on the last page of his final journal. If you're reading this, they already know you're here. The only way out is through. Follow the survey markers north. There's a shaft. You have to seal it properly. I was too afraid. Don't be like me. I went back at dawn when the mountains were still blue with morning mist. The survey markers were old plastic tags nailed to trees, faded but visible. They led me to a depression in the earth, maybe 15 feet across, ringed with half-rotted plywood and caution tape that had gone gray with age. The shaft went straight down. I could smell it. Not decay exactly, but something organic and wrong, like meat left too long in a hot car. I heard the voices then. Multiple people calling up from the dark, some speaking English, some not. They weren't asking for help. They were inviting me down. Their tone was friendly, casual, like neighbors calling you over for coffee. I don't know what they were. Maybe something that's always been in these mountains, in caves and hollows that go deeper than any mine. Maybe something we disturbed when we started tearing into the earth for coal. The old-timers used to talk about the things that live underneath, but I'd always thought it was just folklore. I did what Vernon couldn't. I spent 2 days hauling concrete mix up that mountain, bag by bag, mixed it with creek water, and poured it into that shaft until I couldn't hear the voices anymore. I sold the cabin to a developer from Lexington without ever going back inside. Vernon's journals went into a fire pit. Some knowledge shouldn't spread. But here's what keeps me up at night. Vernon's map had 37 locations marked. I only sealed one.